prisoner swap. 10 Americans coming from Venezuela in a complex prisoner swap that frees Americans and residents detained in Venezuela in exchange for more than 200 Venezuelan migrants who were imprisoned in El Salvador. We'll break down the news. President Trump files a defamation lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal, Rupert Murdoch, and others over a report about a birthday message Trump allegedly sent to Jeffrey Epstein in 2003. The president denies ever writing the message. This as the Justice Department calls for the release of the grand jury testimony in the Epstein case. Deadly blast. 3 Los Angeles County deputies killed at a training facility. The department's biggest loss of life in 168 years. The team apparently handling explosives when that blast occurred. The bomb squad responding to the scene. We'll bring you the details. President Trump signing a landmark bill to regulate crypto after the House voted overwhelmingly to make the Genius Act the first major law to govern digital currency. Critics citing a conflict of interest, pointing to the Trump family's business entanglements in crypto. Republican Congressman and Financial Services Committee member William Timmons, who voted for the bill, joins us. A crucial court hearing coming up between Harvard University and President Trump as the university sues to restore billions of dollars in federal grants, arguing that the administration violated Harvard's First Amendment rights. This as Columbia University inches closer to ending its standoff with the White House. Project Runway, now in its 21st season. The series is returning with some familiar faces. Award-winning fashion designer Christian Siriano and celebrity stylist Lau Roach join us to talk about what dramatic turns fans can expect this season.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Morgan Norwood. Thank you so much for streaming with us tonight. We do begin with that major prisoner swap just announced. 10 Americans and permanent U.S. residents held by authorities in Venezuela have been released. The U.S. Embassy in Venezuela put out this photo of the Americans. The United States had considered them to be wrongfully detained. And they took a selfie on the plane ride home. You see them there with that American flag. In the exchange, El Salvador released more than 250 Venezuelans being held in a notorious prison. The U.S. had sent those Venezuelans to El Salvador in that airlift back in March. But tonight, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is thanking El Salvador's president for his help. We're standing by to hear from a Florida congressman with more. But first, our senior political correspondent, Rachel Scott, leading us off with more information on the Americans now heading home and how all of this happened.
Tonight, the White House announcing 10 Americans who were detained in Venezuela are on their way home after a large-scale prisoner swap. Their release comes in exchange for more than 250 Venezuelan migrants who were deported by the Trump administration as part of his immigration crackdown and sent to El Salvador's notorious mega prison. El Salvador's president tonight releasing this video of those prisoners boarding planes in handcuffs, saying we've handed over all Venezuelan nationals detained in our country. Among those released tonight, 37-year-old Lucas Hunter, who was detained on a surfing trip, his family pleading for his return.
Bring Lucas home safe.
Also free tonight, Jorge Vargas, a grandfather who was detained last September. His family says his health has been in decline. And U.S. Navy SEAL Wilbert Castaneda, arrested in his hotel room while visiting a friend. Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying, quote, every wrongfully detained American in Venezuela is now free and back in our homeland.
And joining us now to discuss more about the released U.S. nationals and the prisoner swap is Congressman Carlos Jimenez. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us tonight. First, what is your reaction to the news of these nationals coming home? And are any of them from the Miami area that you represent?
You know, this is such breaking news that I don't know if any of them are from Miami. I wouldn't be surprised if they were because, there's a lot of travel back and forth between Miami and Venezuela, or at least there used to be. And so I'm very happy that 10 Americans are coming back home again and that we were able to get this swap deal done.
You mentioned you're not sure whether, any of them were from the Miami area or your district, but were you aware or involved in any of these dealings?
No, I wasn't. And so, my hats off to Secretary of State Marco Rubio for what he did and accomplished. And I know that the president of El Salvador was also very much involved in this deal. And so we get 10 of our Americans back, and then 250 or so Venezuelans go back to Venezuela from that prison in El Salvador. From what I understand, all or if not most of those were gang members, Tren de Aragua gang members. And so Maduro gets some of his people back.
Well, you've been very vocal and relentless critic of the Maduro regime in Venezuela. The Miami Herald is reporting that, quote, for the government of Nicolas Maduro, the deal offered not only the return of detained Venezuelans, but also a possible opening to normalize economic ties, or particularly in the crucial oil sector. Congressman, do you think that this is, in fact, an effort to normalize relations with the oil-rich South American nation?
I hope it's not an effort from us to normalize relations with them. I think it may have been a way, because I'm trying to figure out why would Maduro want 250 gang members back. And I think it's a way for him to say, look, I can cooperate, you can deal with me. And so, why don't you lift some of the sanctions? Why don't you allow Chevron to continue to explore oil in my country and sell it, while at the same time giving me a big chunk of the profits? And so I'm totally against that. Maduro is an illegitimate leader. There is a duly elected president of Venezuela. His name is not Nicolas Maduro. It's Edmundo Gonzalez, and that's who we should be dealing with. And so, but I do think that there's something else going on here with this prisoner swap.
Well, my last question for you, because I want to zoom out here. Do you think it's a possibility that the Trump administration will send more deportees to the maximum security facility in El Salvador now that the others have been handed over to Venezuela? What happens from here?
Well, I think, look, the only ones that I think should go there, and I think that have gone there, are folks that are gang members. And we know that we've had an invasion of Tren de Aragua and other gang members in the United States during the Biden administration years, and we need to get them out of the country. And so, criminals and gang members don't belong here, and they need to go back home. Venezuela wasn't willing to take them, and so they were shipped to a third country, which is totally legal thing to do. And so, does that leave a spot? Yeah, maybe, but it should be that prison should be reserved for pretty hardened criminals.
All right, Florida Congressman Carlos Jimenez, thank you so much for your time tonight. We appreciate you.
My pleasure.
Well, we're learning President Donald Trump has filed a defamation lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal, Rupert Murdoch, and others over a Thursday report about a birthday letter that Trump allegedly sent to Jeffrey Epstein back in 2003. Now, the president has denied writing the message and says the letter is non-existent. It comes as the Justice Department, though, is calling for the release of the grand jury testimony in the Epstein case. Here's Chief White House Correspondent Mary Bruce.
Tonight, as President Trump tries to silence an uproar from some of his own supporters, the Justice Department now asking courts in New York and Florida to unseal grand jury records in the case of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Trump saying, based on the ridiculous amount of publicity given to Jeffrey Epstein, I have asked Attorney General Pam Bondi to produce any and all pertinent grand jury testimony, subject to court approval. But that could take weeks or even months and would not fulfill his team's promise to release the full FBI files on Epstein.
Here's the problem. The grand jury testimony is largely about Epstein and Maxwell, not about all the rich and powerful men who abused, assaulted, and abandoned young women. Those people are still being protected.
Today, I asked the president why he isn't doing more.
Mr. President, why haven't you ordered Pam Bondi to release the full files?
The president's announcement came just hours after the Wall Street Journal reported that in 2003, he allegedly sent Epstein a letter the paper described as, quote, bawdy for Epstein's 50th birthday. ABC News has not been able to confirm the existence of the letter, but in an interview with the Journal, Trump denies he wrote it. And tonight, he filed a $10 billion lawsuit against the paper and its conservative owner, Rupert Murdoch. The president once had a friendly relationship with Epstein, socializing in New York and Palm Beach. In 2002, he told New York Magazine, I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it, Jeffrey enjoys his social life. When Epstein was arrested in 2019, Trump said they'd had a falling out and hadn't spoken in 15 years. Some of Trump's top supporters, including his FBI director, Kash Patel, and Patel's number 2, Dan Bongino, have long promoted shadowy Epstein conspiracies.
I don't trust any story they tell me about Jeffrey Epstein. there is a reason this client list is hidden.
Earlier this year, Bondi said she had that list.
It's sitting on my desk right now to review.
But over the 4th of July weekend, the Justice Department and FBI said the list didn't exist and that they would not release any more information about Epstein, leaving some of the president's top supporters disillusioned.
Dan Bongino, who was always like shouting from the rooftops, we're going to get to the bottom of this and find out who these people are. Everyone's saying, no, Epstein killed himself. No, nothing to see here. And it's like, okay, well, that's why people are cynical.
And Mary Bruce is joining us now from the White House. And Mary, the president already signed a bipartisan cryptocurrency legislation into law today. What more can you tell us about these bills?
Yeah, well, Morgan, this is a major milestone for this industry and for this White House. It's the first major piece of crypto legislation ever signed into law. President Trump delivering on a campaign promise to boost these digital assets and firms. The bill creates new rules for what's known as stable coins, a popular form of digital currency. Now, supporters say that it provides needed and much necessary guardrails, but critics say that it doesn't provide enough to counter conflicts of interest and will only benefit the president. Morgan.
And certainly all eyes on the future of crypto. Thank you, Mary Bruce. And we're joined now by South Carolina Republican Representative William Timmons, a member of the House Financial Services Committee. Representative, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I want to dive into this cryptocurrency thing. Give us some clarity about the Genius Act and why this legislation that helps govern cryptocurrency is so important.
So the future of the global economy is in digital assets. And it's critical that the U.S. is the center of the global economy, as it's always been for the last 100 plus years. So there's two pieces of this, stablecoin and market structure. So stablecoin was just signed into law. That's the Genius Act. The next is Clarity, which we just passed out of the House. Both of these bills basically just make sure that the rules of the road are there, the consumer protections, the legal framework are there to allow these businesses to make the U.S. economy their home. The future of the U.S. economy and the global economy is digital assets and innovation and blockchain technology. And we got to make sure that the U.S. is the center of that.
I want to talk about some criticism on the other side. The ranking member of the Financial Service Committee, Maxine Waters, was a staunch critic of this bipartisan legislation. She actually sounded the alarm in an op-ed saying the bill will, quote, open the floodgates to massive fraud and financial ruin for American families. Your response to that?
The ranking member doesn't understand how the internet works. She doesn't understand how digital assets work. She doesn't understand how any of the technology that she's talking about works. She literally just has no idea what she's talking about. But this is the thing. This has been a bipartisan effort. Overwhelmingly, the Genius Act had over 100 Democrats support it. The Clarity Act had more than that. So, I mean, this is not a partisan endeavor. The ranking member she's just wrong.
I do want to switch gears to Jeffrey Epstein. The president has suggested there is no, quote, smoking gun in the Jeffrey Epstein files. But should the DOJ release the complete files as originally promised?
I don't understand this issue. I mean, I was a prosecutor for 5 years. I think that transparency is best. I guess the president and the Department of Justice have said they're going to release all of the documents relative to the indictment. I just think that the American people deserve to know the truth, and whatever that is and however that goes is what I think should happen. But I trust the president. I trust the attorney general, and I think this is all going to work itself out.
My last question for you. You represent part of South Carolina that includes Greenville and Spartanburg. About 20% of your district, that's more than 1 million people, rely on Medicaid. What have you heard from your constituents about the Medicaid cuts in the budget bill that passed earlier this month? What are they telling you? And then how do you reassure them if they're worried about losing coverage?
So the biggest issue with the Medicaid cuts, as the Democrats phrase it, which is not really true, is that 5.5 million people are going to have to either work 20 hours a week or volunteer 20 hours a week in order to continue to maintain government subsidized health care. So again, this only affects able-bodied adults that have no children. So it's a red herring. It's not real. If you are getting free government health care because you are not making enough money, you need to pull your weight. And if you can't get a job for 20 hours a week, you can volunteer for 20 hours a week. This isn't that hard. So like 85% of the country agrees that if you are getting free government health care and you are able-bodied and you have no dependents, that you should work 20 hours a week. This is not a big deal. So I don't think that this is a real issue. It's a partisan issue. It's Democrats trying to say whatever the Republicans do is bad, and it's not real.
Well, you just used the term able-bodied people, and I just want to point out some data that shows that many of the people that you described, about 65%, actually do work. They work low-wage jobs, just not ones that pay or have benefits or health care. I'm curious, or they're either caretaking or taking care of themselves because they are ill. I want you to answer the question, how do you make sure that they don't fall through the cracks here? And I think that's what constituents want to know.
All they have to do is they have to report that they're working. All they have to do is they have to report that they're working. It's very simple. And again, the 5 million people that are not currently reporting that they're working, all they have to do is report that they're working. And if they're not working, they can get a job. And if they're not going to get a job, they can volunteer. But 20 hours a week is a side job for many people. So I'm not asking a lot, but we have $37 trillion in debt. We got a $2 trillion annual deficit. You got to pull your weight if you want to get free healthcare. This isn't hard, and it's an 85% of the American people agree that if you're going to get free benefits and you're capable of contributing, you need to contribute.
All right, Congressman Timmons, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Well, the House voted today to send more than $1 billion of public broadcasting cuts to President Trump's desk for approval. This bill claws back $9 billion from the federal budget, including $1.1 billion from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Well, the CBP provides critical funding to outlets that air PBS and NPR programming. The bill also cuts billions in foreign aid, formalizing cuts made by Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency. Well, Americans insured through healthcare.gov could see their insurance premiums increase 75% on average. Analysis from research group KFF indicates that the people using the Affordable Care Act marketplace may actually see their premiums rise up to 15%, its highest increase since 2018. Insurers blame changes in federal policy, including the expiration of tax credits and added costs to healthcare providers caused by tariffs. We turn now to that deadly blast that took the life of 3 sheriff's deputies in Los Angeles County. This explosion in the parking lot of an arson explosives training facility. Sources say the deputies were handling the explosives at the time of the blast. The sheriff's department is mourning its worst loss of life in 168 years. ABC's Trevor Ault on the scene.
Well, Morgan, these sheriff's deputies were considered some of the best on the bomb squad, and they died here in this explosion at the facility where they've done so much of their training. Authorities are devastated at the loss. They're also completely puzzled as to how the explosion occurred. Tonight, a horrific explosion at a law enforcement training center, killing 3 Los Angeles County sheriff's deputies.
This is, unfortunately, the largest loss of life for us as the LA County Sheriff's Department since 1857.
Witnesses reported hearing a massive boom just after 7:30 this morning at the arson explosives detail facility in East LA.
An explosion with 3 down. Fire is also notified.
You can see 2 covered bodies of those deputies on the ground next to a truck with open doors, a third body covered by a blue tarp a few feet away. Sources tell ABC News preliminary information shows they were handling an explosive they'd recovered from a routine bomb squad call and believed it was safe to move when it exploded.
It appears LA County Sheriff's deputies from the bomb squad were pulling something on a cart. That's what it looks like to us. There was an explosion.
The back window of that police SUV blown out. Investigators sealing off the scene for hours. All 3 deputies described as elite members of the arson explosive detail with decades of service.
They are fantastic experts, and unfortunately, I lost 3 of them today.
The sheriff visibly emotional as he addressed the media.
I have met with 2 of the 3 families thus far, and as you can imagine, those were extremely challenging conversations. So, anyways, ready for questions.
And Morgan, the FBI and the ATF are assisting in this investigation. They're all trying to retrace the steps of these bomb squad members. They want to better understand the devices that they picked up on Thursday. They were considered to not be dangerous. They still don't know how they exploded. Morgan?
Questions tonight. Trevor, thank you. Meanwhile, more than 60 million people are on alert for flash flooding, dangerous heat, and severe storms sweeping from the Midwest to New York. Meteorologist Lee Goldberg is tracking it all. But first, our Alex Perez is in New Orleans tonight. Alex?
Hey, Morgan, it's been a summer of storms, and there's no sign Mother Nature is letting up. Here on the Gulf Coast, they are bracing for more rain.
Tonight, millions on high alert for flash floods once again as summer storms fire up. Overnight, southern Indiana hit hard. In New Pekin, Indiana, this camper slamming into that bridge, bobbing in the water before it's crumpled like a soda can, sucked under the bridge by the fast-moving water.
Oh, God, there it goes.
Thankfully, no one was inside. From Texas,
oh my God,
and New Mexico, to New York City. The month of July has been marked by epic floods, and so far this year, the National Weather Service has issued more than 3,000 flood alerts. Along the Gulf Coast, tropical rainstorms flooding roads in New Iberia, Louisiana.
And Morgan, a flood watch remains in effect for southern Louisiana and Mississippi through tomorrow as this Gulf-fueled system moves in. Up to 2 inches of rain an hour possible in some areas. Morgan?
Certainly those areas on alert tonight. Alex Perez, thank you. And let's check in now with Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg from our New York station, WABC. And Lee, what should we expect in the forecast?
Morgan, unfortunately, we're watching more flood zones this weekend. Now, we'll start with the Gulf Coast, where Louisiana and Mississippi will have some flood watches that will go through the overnight and into part of your Saturday rounds of rain, maybe 2 to 4 inches of rainfall. But there's more serious flooding going on, and that's over parts of Virginia. In fact, a significant risk, and we've seen flooding going on near the Richmond area, and we can see rainfall rates 2 to 3 inches an hour. And that flood threat is elevated from Kentucky all the way to the Outer Banks. Now, Saturday, our attention's going to turn to the Midwest all the way into parts of the Ohio Valley. A complex of thunderstorms could bring drenching winds, drenching rain, and we're talking flash flooding, even a brief tornado, and that goes from Des Moines to Chicago, all the way to Indianapolis, maybe even to Cleveland later in the day. This is all fueled by the extreme heat on the middle of the country, going over to the southeast. The feel-like readings over 100. There's still some relief in the northeast, but that's going to be erased by the end of the weekend as well. Morgan?
All right, Lee Goldberg, thank you. Well, coming up, several of America's most elite universities are under pressure from the federal government to make reforms or lose billions in funding. The government demanding sweeping changes. What to expect as Harvard University faces off with the administration in court. And a new color for Cheetos? How about all natural Doritos? The health makeover coming to some of America's favorite snack foods. We'll be right back. The Trump administration has accused prominent American universities of incubating so-called wokeness and stifling conservative views. The government also accuses the colleges of not protecting Jewish people on their campuses, in particular during protests against Israel's war in Gaza last year. So what's at stake for these elite schools? We take a look and by the numbers. America's oldest university, Harvard, is the biggest target right now with its $9 billion in federal funding. That's billion with a B. $7 billion of that is allocated to their 11 affiliated hospitals, and $2 billion is in research grants for the university. The administration has frozen more than $2.2 billion in Harvard's funding already and sent the university a list of demands like appointing an outside overseer to ensure viewpoint diversity. In April, Harvard sued the administration to fight the funding cuts. Dozens of other schools, though, have had their funding targeted or threatened, including $1 billion in cuts at Cornell and $400 million in federal grants and contracts at Columbia University. Columbia's president was at the White House Thursday, reportedly finalizing a deal with the Trump administration. Columbia is expected to have to pay $200 million to settle the matter. That's according to the New York Times. And staying on this topic now, several American universities are being scrutinized by the Trump administration for their handling of pro-Palestinian activism on their campus. And the president of the University of Virginia resigned last month amid pressure from the Justice Department to reform the university's DEI programs. And just as you heard, Harvard has some $9 billion in funding at stake and is suing the Trump administration in an effort to have funding restored. It will all come to a head on Monday when the two parties face a hearing in Boston. For more details, we want to bring in ABC News contributor and Hofstra Law professor James Sample. James, thank you so much for being with us. I want to dive in here because the Trump administration accuses Harvard